Do you want to know how to break into the comic book industry as a writer? In this video, I interview a successful comic book industry writer named Dave Dwonch, who is not only a founder of the well-known publisher Action Lab Entertainment, but also has new comic books of his own coming out soon. The first is a kaiju monster battling miniseries called Jenny Zero, which is being published through Dark Horse. The second is a trilogy called Spores, which is about high school teenagers dealing with a zombie apocalypse. In fact, at this very moment, Spores Part 2 is funding on Kickstarter. There's only a few days left, so I encourage you to click the link in the description below and join me in backing Dave's campaign. Without further ado, here is my interview with Dave Dwonch.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Dave.
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Hey, I am doing extremely well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You are like every time I'm like, you are my final interview, and like then you popped up, and I'm like, no, Angela's my final interview. So tell me about your show. Is it all ages show? Is it R-rated show? You bleep stuff out for YouTube? Is that right?
It's a great question. So howtowritecomics.com, my basic audience that I'm targeting, it's brand new YouTube show, is brand new writers. So people who want to know the basic mechanics, story mechanics of writing, people who want to know how to break into the industry, people want to know how to the basic stuff like script formatting and what publishers are looking for and that sort of thing. Well, speaking of writing in any genre, and speaking of writing mechanics, like I'm curious, like how you I think I looked you up. You started life as an artist. You broke into comics and then became a writer. So can you tell me a little bit about how you broke into comics? Period, and how you broke into comics as a writer, your first writing gig. What was that experience? What was that experience?
Shit, it's been so long. So yeah, you tipped your hat, young sir. I'm 47, so like I've been at it for like 20 years. I mean, I started drawing when I was a kid, and I always thought, oh, I'm gonna go to art school. And then like my parents were like, you're gonna be an engineer. You're great at math and science. There's no way that you're gonna do that because you're gonna be homeless by the time you're 20. And coincidentally, I was homeless when I was 20, but that's besides the point. The uh, the uh, the idea of going to art school was always what I wanted to do. And when my parents said no, I remember I drew me ripping my dad's heart out and just being like, you ripped my heart out, and throwing it on the table and leaving it for him, right? And uh right after that, he enrolled me in art school because he was like, what the heck, this is great. So I think he understood the passion. I just think that they were worried, as parents do, that their kid's going to be a struggling artist, right? And for the most part, I've been tethered to my day job for years. I mean, I've been at my company for 20 years now. Um, and health insurance, man, I'm not going to give that up. That's crazy. Retirement, why would I give that up, right? But I always knew that I wanted to be an artist, and I always had dreams of working for Marvel and doing all that good stuff. But then I realized I was really, really slow, and my style is extremely specific. It's that kind of like that 90s flash animation style, like Powerpuff Girls and that kind of stuff. It's not at all. I'm not at all cut out for drawing Daredevil and stuff like that. I could show you some of my drawings offline. I don't want to like burden you with this stuff. But yeah, so then I just realized, after I'd self-published a couple of books, I remember, like, I think I did 3 graphic novels before I realized that I wasn't cut out for drawing a monthly comic book. But and that's not to say that I won't go back to drawing something. It's just got to be the right project, right? And my writing style is so different from my art style. I haven't come up with the right project. So after the 3 graphic novels, it was one of those things where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try and just write, because I've been writing full scripts for myself. I think in a very visual manner, and when I put it down on paper, I'm pretty honest with myself. Like I will write details so that I don't forget. And when I'm working with an artist that I don't know very well, like Santiago, the guy that drew that, we've been working together for like 3 years. So like I can shorthand something to him and he like, here's a double page spread of this, that, and the other thing. And he's like, boom, there it is. Right now, someone that I don't know or that I don't necessarily trust right away, it's a full page of script for that, right? Even though there's barely any lines in it, it's just description, description, description. But again, I just realized that I was drawing and I drew those first 3 graphic novels because I had stories to tell. And so while I really love art, it was just a mechanism to tell stories. And then I was like, well, okay, if I can write a script in a week. So a comic book would take me a month and a half, 2 months to draw, where I can write a script in a week and then I could give it to an artist and they're done in 2 weeks. And it's better than I wanted it, or better than I imagined it to be. Not better than I wanted it to be, obviously, but better than I could have done and faster than I could have done. So then I was like, well, I'm still a self-starter. I colored all of my original graphic novels. I'll color over other people's artwork. So then I became a colorist. And then I was like, well, I was lettering my own stuff. Might as well just keep lettering, right? And so
Wow.
I just kept picking stuff up, and I spent all of my money on a Mac G4 back in the day, and that computer lasted for like 10 years, 15 years. Computers don't do that anymore, but Macs back then, they were like rocks, and so I kept that computer and I just kept going and going and going. And I got married and she wanted kids. I didn't want kids. We had different agendas and the relationship was very strained. And I remember when she said, well, we're having kids, and when we do, you're quitting this comic thing. And I just realized, ooh, this is not going to work. This is that's the end of this relationship. Flash forward, I'm remarried. My wife is super supportive and awesome and super smart and funny and creative. And so it's just a much more positive, life aspirations are there, and we're working together to get there.
Oh, that's great. So you started with, what was your first graphic novel that you wrote?
So I did a book called Special Education, and it was about a remedial class in a superhero high school. So it was like all of the kids with the dumbest powers, and a lot of that was my riff on Catholic school, because I was a Catholic school boy, and it's not that I was like a real crazy God dude, but my parents wanted the best for me and they wanted me to grow up like they grew up, right? I mean, that's what parents do. And so I went to a school that I wasn't really into, and I was never ever like as popular as the popular kids. So I was one of the special ed kids. I had a special set of talents that was very unique to me, that wasn't what was the norm in high school. And then I just wrote about it. You know what I mean? So it was a lot of fun. I did 4 issues of that. I did a web comic called Spacetime Condominium, which was it was a sitcom. It was how do I describe this one? This is the worst elevator pitch. This was it was a book about 5 versions of the same guy from alternate realities that lived in the same apartment that existed outside of space and time. So like, if you imagine the show Friends, but every friend is you and you're all a dickhead. So it was like just this really funny, raunchy sitcom. And I wrote it as if it were like a real Canadian show. And I was a storyboard artist on it. So like when it posted on the web, it would be the artwork and the story. And then if you read the story below, it ran parallel with the actual series. And it was me as the storyboard artist telling the story of the production of this Canadian show and giving everyone the infights that were happening. And then I took like photos of my buddy, Clay Sagan. He's hilarious, but I took photos of him, and then I added a mullet to one of them. I added, really poofy hair. I made one of them a gay fitness instructor, and then I put them all together in this Photoshop as historical photos from the actual production of the show. So much so that people thought it was a real show, and it was really, really funny. That was when I was like, I'm just going to get super meta with everything, and everyone compares it to like a Rick and Morty because it's like multi-dimensional, craziness. But it came out in like 1998 or 2001, something like that. It was crazy. It was like way before Rick and Morty. And then I did a book called Gnome, which like my wife at the time and I, we had a really bad living arrangement where like the neighbors were super white trash, and they would like blast just like Queen's Fat Bottom Girls and go around in bikinis screaming the song at the top of their lungs in the front lawn. And then there was like a mold issue, and I was like, what's with this mold? And then it turns out they were flooding the basement with water and then complaining to the landlord that there was mold so that they didn't have to pay rent. They didn't pay rent for like 2 years while screaming Fat Bottom Girls. And then one morning I woke up and I was like, why is there so much water in the driveway? And I looked, and the hose was parked on underneath my area of the house. So, because it was a duplex. And I was like, we're leaving right now. So we moved back into her parents' house. We didn't move, well, not back into, she moved back into there and I moved up there, but it was like a really miserable time. And I was like, I'm going to devote all of my time to this one graphic novel I did called Gnome. And I just spent all of my time locked in our tiny room drawing this thing. And within 30 days, I had an 80-page graphic novel. And that was my challenge to myself. I can't say it was the best thing I ever did. But it was, I learned a lot from it. And I was able to take my mind out of my horrible situation, which was just like, oh my God, I'm living with someone else's parents right now. This is just the worst thing ever.
Wow. So
yeah.
That's pretty cool. So you're telling me that the way you broke in, you started self-publishing several comics, web comics, graphic novels, just bang, 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 bang. At what point or how did you transition into paid comic writing work?
Oof. Well, paid. Let's talk about paid loosely, man. I mean, like comics are a struggle. They're a real struggle. But so I was working on those books. I was getting pretty known in the indie market for this stuff. I was on a bunch of podcasts, especially at that time, Comic Geek Speak was huge. And they had me on the show a bunch. And they like really raunchy dudes because they're real clean cut dudes. So they liked having like dirtbags like me on their show to just talk crap about stuff. And so they used to have a convention. They were big enough to have their own convention, and like hundreds of people would show up, and we'd have a great weekend of just listeners and the podcast. But I met a lot of great people, Sean Gabbering and Sean Pryor, who eventually the two of them and I and a couple of other people, Chad Ciccone and his friend Brian Seaton, we were all sitting around. This was before Brian Seaton. It was the core four is what I'll call us. We were all sitting around at Heroes Con, and I'm a people person, and I'm a huge organizer of things. Like I love producing comics. I love helping people produce comics. It's like one of my favorite things in the world. And we were sitting around, and I was like, each one of us, we all have a certain set of skills. Like we're the special ed kids. We all have a certain power in this group. And I was like, Sean Pryor is the face. Sean Gabbern is definitely the behind the scenes production guy. I'm like, I was joking, but I sometimes think it's serious. Where I was like, I have impeccable taste in comic books. It's like, let me find comics to publish, and you get them together. You represent them. Chad is a lawyer by day. And I was like, you draw up all the contracts. And then he was like, I'm going to bring my friend Brian Seaton in as the money guy. And he was the silent partner who then became CEO and not so silent. And for a while that worked pretty well. And so we started tearing it up. Like that weekend, I think I met Jeremy Whitley. That's the same. Yeah. We were sitting next to each other and in what I like to call Sex Offender Alley. And Sex Offender Alley is the furthest away from the main entrance and facing the women's bathroom. And like, you're just watching women go to the bathroom all day long while no one's paying attention to you because you're in the back of the friggin' convention. That used to be my spot, like every convention when I didn't have a name at all. I mean, I'm not saying I have a name at all, but I'm like, when they're like, hey, where do you want to be? I'm like, not Sex Offender Alley. That's where I don't want to be, guys. But it was fortuitous that weekend because it was me and Jeremy Whitley sitting next to each other, and we struck up a conversation. At the end of that show, we swap books. His book goes into one of my boxes. My book goes into his box. And then 2 months later, maybe a month later, I unpack my box and I find his comic book and I read it. And it's Princeless. And it's the first iteration of Princeless, which is, it has a different artist, but the writing is exactly what I want. It's like everything that I want in a comic book writing wise. So I contacted Jeremy and I said, hey, I love everything about your writing. I love this book. Where are you at? Are you married to this artist, or can you get a divorce? Because I think this book could be a hit, but you really need someone that's going to tell this story the way it needs to be told. And he was like, no, the artist that I used is a fine artist. And that was their first comic book. And it was, I don't want to say rudimentary. There was a lot of style to it, but the storytelling wasn't there. And when you're telling a story like Princeless, you really need the marriage. You need an Anna Lencioni. You need someone that can do cartoony, that can tell a story really well. And so Sean Gabarin was doing these things called 2-page gory stories. And Sean is a fantastic writer, and he can tell a complete horror story in 2 pages. And he had a mini series. I think he did like 4 of these. And I did some art in some of them. I did the covers for all the covers for his original graphic novels because I was a real fun designer back then too. And so we just started looking through his 2-page gory stories, and we were like, that artist is good. That artist is great. That artist needs work. That artist. So we had a list of like 100 artists that did 2 pages for Sean. So when we started Action Lab, we just started saying, can you do more than 2 pages? And they're like, yeah. And so we found him an artist for Prince. We found Jeremy an artist for Princeless. And that's M. Goodwin, who I still work with today. We're working on something right now. And we worked on a Nintendo game together. She was a narrative director at a game. We did a Nintendo game together. We're working on a PlayStation thing right now. And she's like a dear friend of mine, a supreme talent, one of the most talented artists I've ever met. Super nice, and like as a mystery benefactor, like we work really well together. So when there's like a bone to throw, she throws it right at me, and I'm like, let's go, let's get to work. So we're working on a couple of things now, and I think the next book that I develop this year is going to be drawn by Mia, and I hope it's true. We'll see. We're both really busy.
So you started self-publishing, and then you and your buddies formed Action Labs, and then people started submitting work to you. So I guess, and then you were, I'm guessing you were direct market, meaning going direct to comic shops mostly, and you grew. You were effectively like an image publisher, Image Comics. You're effectively your own version of that, and you probably had tons of submissions, and you grew by series that you would put to direct market. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds right. And like my breaking into comics, it's funny because like I went from indie comics, started my own company with some like-minded guys and some not like-minded guys, left that company because I was not like-minded by the time I left, and went back to indie comics. I just kept doing it. And I think that being at Action Lab and putting out the books that I put out, it garnered a reputation, or at least my name was out there, like you could Google me and there were my books. And then, when I left, I was like, you know what? A part of why I left was because I was not creating as many books as I could have for myself because I was managing so many books. And when I left, I was like, it's time to go hunt. It's time to go to the other side of the table. It's time to go talk to editors and do things that I've never done before. I was always the editor that everyone came to. Then I became the person that started going to editors with my hat in my hand. And I swear, it's hard business. It is tough. And I bet you money, that's probably a good place for us to stop. And then we could get into talking about what it's like to shop books and what that process is, because it's a difficult one. And it's one that you really got to be like 100% sure of yourself. People smell weakness. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have your pitch down and you haven't thought of your story from every angle, someone's going to just poke a pinhole in it and it's just going to seep out of that pinhole. You know what I mean? All of your energy will seep out of there. So
that's perfect. That's a perfect stopping place. I'm curious, like, from the other side, you know what it's like from the other side. What are comic book publishers looking for? What do they want? Are they looking for pitches? Are they looking for one-off stories? Are they looking for series? What are they looking for? What do they need? How do writers find that need? How can writers get paid publishing, get their work published? What does that even look like? So let me stop this right here,
Cool.
and I'll send you a meeting invite shortly. So just keep an eye on that Gmail inbox, okay?
Awesome, will do. Shopping comics is the hardest thing that any creator can do, because like, you work in your vacuum, your little bubble,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, at best, it's 4 to 6 people that are working on this comic book. And then you're like, is it good enough? I don't even know, like, and then you have to go out to people that you admire and respect and hold your life in their hands, and have a lot of them just tell you no, and so like pitching is I'm always nervous. I'm still nervous. I'm an old ass man that did this, that sat on both sides of the desk, and I'm still like, man, I'm nervous. I don't love this. But that's why conventions are so great, because you get to meet people in a social environment, and a lot of times, they're just like you. I mean, comic people are pretty cool. They're all pretty giving and helpful for the most part. I met a couple of heels, but for the most part, it's been pretty positive.
Okay, that's pretty fair, and thank you for the encouragement. I think when maybe this just comes from a noob sort of a place of thinking, but for example, this guy I found on Kickstarter. I just put it in the chat.
Yeah.
He puts in his bio. He's got a Kickstarter going right now. He puts in his bio that he had some work published at Action Lab. I imagine that he's a writer. So I imagine so I don't know what that means. I don't. Was he a staff writer? Did he pitch a story? Did he pitch a short story that became part of an anthology? Like, what does it mean to be that guy? Like, to be a writer and to break in and what would you be able to shed some light on that?
I don't know Hanu sounds familiar, but I'm not sure if I was in on his book. So I'm gonna click on his Oh, no, I can't click on his Instagram because the link is broken. That's the first tip. How about let's get a real link going. But I think it's good to have credits like that, right? Because I mean, if there are brands that people trust, I think that's why a lot of writers get that Marvel and DC credit and then go right back to their creator owned stuff, right? Because you get you're a trusted name with a trusted brand, and then you get to develop those followers and fans, and then you get to bounce back and go and do your own thing. And I think having credits like that, I can't speak to anyone else's like success or happiness in the industry, right? I can only speak to my own. And there are a handful of things that I'm like, man, I could have done that better, but I'm glad that I got out there and I just kept pushing forward, because now it seems to be opening doors. But honestly, I think that the doors that get opened are the ones that you have to knock on, right? I don't know if Kickstarter is necessarily the place where you're going to necessarily build your brand, but it is going to help you fund your project, and then you get to actualize it and then get it out there in the world for people to see, right? So and for me, being published, like I do both. I do Kickstarters and I do the shopping, right? When I shopped Jenny Zero, I shopped it like an idiot. Like, I didn't shop it professionally at all. Like, I had the pitch packet, but I was walking around the Comic-Con with my phone and I was just like, take a look at this art. Just, hey, editor, take a look at that. And they're like, whoa, what the hell is it? And I'm like, it's a book I'm working on. And then they're like, what's the story? And I was like, well, it's this. And they were like, that's a pretty good story, but that artwork is amazing. So like, you can never, as a writer, like, you can't discount the art. Like, the art is always the first thing that people see, right? So any pitch should be like the image, the art, the zhuzh, right? I'm gonna you're recording this, right? So I can actually show you. I just, while I was waiting for you, I updated my Chrome. Oh, okay, good. I have like a folder of just submission packets. So I'm just going to show you one. And this is one that doesn't have a home yet, but it is something that it's mainly because I'm lazy. And And that's another thing. Like you tailor your pitches um, for the publishers that you want to engage, right? And this one, I was like, it's fun, it's topical. I don't know which publisher I should send this to. Like, I feel like it's a Lion Forge book, and I'm like making inroads there. So there are people I'm definitely tracking down for it. And I know people at Oni. Some of my pitches, I'm like, okay, I know that this is a book I want to send to Boom, Oni, Dark Horse, whatever. I have a pretty good relationship with my editor at Dark Horse, so I send him everything because I don't really know what they want. I only think I know what they want. Like, I sent him an all ages project, and I was like, I don't think you guys are into this. And he's like, we are looking for things like this. And I was like, I had no idea. So this is just an example of one of my pitches. And obviously it just, like, image forward, this is the book, right? So the first thing you see is, what it's about, or not even what it's about, but this is what you're going to get in the package, right? And then it's like, here's what it is. It's a 5-issue miniseries by me and my art team from Infinite Seven. Hey, by the way, here's my old address, everybody, and also my phone number. You guys can call me. That's weird. And then it's like synopsis, demographic, themes, and subtext, right? And then it just goes right into it. And this is an older pitch, and I've refined my pitch process a bit, but I gave him the whole first issue. I was like, if you're not in, you're not in, So
Wow.
Most people want to have, here's another pitch. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see if this will open. Most people will want, okay, yeah. So this is definitely something that I catered to Image because I knew that they want a cover page, right? So my cover page, and then I hit him with the artwork, right? And then after I did that, it was like, let me see if it'll work. So then again, same thing, right? Same exact thing, just formatted slightly different for the publisher I want to engage with. And then, this I actually went a little deeper because the story's a little bit more complicated. And I was like, I want you to all understand the backstory of all of the characters that are in it. And then I hit him with full story again. And because they are Image and they only want 6 pages, I only gave them 6 pages. Whereas I like to always include a full issue because I want people to be able to experience it, And if they don't read it, they don't read it. Oh, well, that's not on me. That's on them,
Wow. But now 5-issue miniseries, I don't know if that was accepted. But to me, so I see, I wouldn't know that off the bat. I don't know what publishers are looking for. For example, are they happy with a one shot or no? Are they want a 12-issue miniseries? Do they want something to go on indefinitely? That is the sort of thing, what does obviously if it's a creator-owned project, you're self-funding the whole thing. So, if you had a graphic novel, you broke it up, into 5 issues, you already had it done in a way. Could you hand that off to a publisher, versus like, oh, now me and my buddies, now we're all working on this whole time. So could you explain that a little bit? Like, what are the dynamics of what a publisher is looking for? And then
every publisher is different for sure. They're like every publisher, what they're looking for is way different. Like we sent Jenny Zero to Vault, and they were like, the work is beautiful, it's just not our book. And I was like, okay, I get it. Like it's a very gonzo book. You know what I mean? Their stuff is, I don't want to say it's more refined, but it's loftier, I guess. We're writing like Lobo Deadpool type stuff, right? And they're more like hard sci-fi. So it just wasn't a fit. We pitched it to Oni, same thing. We pitched it to Dark Horse. They took it like pretty much instantly. And it's giant monsters. It's like Ultraman style stuff. That's the stuff that they've been publishing for years. They had Godzilla at one point, like they did Big Guy and Rusty by Frank Miller and Jeff Darrow. They've done a lot of books that are similar to Jenny's. So I think it was like the perfect melding of the two, the idea and the company. However, we did pitch it as a 5-issue, and I'll explain why we did it as a 5-issue, and then I'll explain why they wanted it to be 4.
Okay.
We pitched it as a 5-issue because we wanted to get a larger page count and a higher ticket on the trade paperback. So if if a book, maybe not an image book, because an image first volume is usually $9.99, but like at other publishers that would do $12.99 for a trade paperback that's 4 issues, a 5-issue trade would be $14.99. And retailers and comic fandom, they don't really care about $2. But to a creator, that's $2 more in everyone's pocket as a book sells, right? So like for us, it just makes more sense. And if the story is long form, then I want it to be 5 issues. It's just a meatier trade, right? We did design Jenny as a 5-issue, and they said, we want this book. Can you make it 4? And we were like, that's just their business model. They want 4 issues. And we were like, okay, the 5th issue of this book is all about Jenny's dad. And in the narrative, it didn't actually make sense. So it was really easy for us to say, okay, we'll just put that in the next volume if we get a volume. So like, this is firmly about Jenny and what she's going through and how she gets from point A to point B. And we deal with the baggage that she carries over her father, but we don't get into who he is. So it's great because we get to paint the picture one-sided in this volume. And then in the second volume, we get to show the real truth or the other truth. Showing that other truth at the end of an arc that has nothing to do with your main character is probably a dumb thing to do, but we had so many ideas. We were like, we want it, and we wanted a 5th issue. So it was something that we easily said, wait, we get to work with Dark Horse? Yeah, we can roll all of that into the second volume and be fine. So fingers crossed that we get a second volume, because we already started working on it. We already knew that we wanted to do it. And I think that's another thing. A lot of people wait for publishers to say yes or no to a project. I'm just full bore. Go ahead. Just let's go. Let's get it done. Like that thing, that Banshees pitch I just showed you, that 5-issue pitch. Yeah, I could have written 6 pages of it and sent it off to whoever. We're on issue 5 and we're going to finish it before we give it to anyone. So
good for you, man.
Yeah. So like, and that's the thing, like some publishers want a full graphic novel. They want to see the whole thing. Some publishers just want to see 6 pages. Some publishers want their editor, like Oni's really editor heavy, like, and then not in a bad way, but in a way that if they see things that need to be adjusted or tweaked or redrawn or whatever, they'll tell you. And Dark Horse made some notes and gave us some real simple stuff. Thankfully, none of it was art based, because like, that was all done. We had the 4 issues done before we even went to Dark Horse with that book.
That's great.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So generally speaking, like when it comes, there's no such thing as a writer breaking in to get a job at a publisher. Is pretty much like not gonna happen. Like, it's gonna be more of you're a writer who's thinking more like an entrepreneur, who's forming a team of artists and people to come together and pitch a series or pitch something to a publisher, be able to go through, commit to the book, actually execute on it, and that's it. There's no writer's job out there that's really gonna happen. You're not,
well, that's you know what? So far, not this writer. How about that? But not to say that I have had conversations with people at Marvel and people at DC, and everyone has been like, pitch us. Like we know who you are, pitch us. And I'm like, okay, cool. Marvel more so than DC, which I thought was interesting. I was just in touch with an editor over at DC, and I was like, hey, I've got this really great idea for a Flash book, because I love the Flash. He's like my favorite. And they were like, well, we're pretty much dialed in for like the next 4 years. We know what we're doing. So like Marvel and DC are like hugely editor driven. So unless you're the writer that they want to carry the torch for however long, you're probably not going to get that job. That's a tough one, or maybe you're a New York Times bestseller and you could go in there and just like put it on the table and be like, look, there it is. You want to hire this, right? And then people get hired. But yeah, it's a real tough thing. I think people do need to cut their teeth in indie comic books, develop their reputation to be reliable, easy to work with. And by the way, easy to work with is the hardest thing, because if you are a dick, forget it. No one's going to want to work with you. I mean, like, this is a job that you get to pick who you want to surround yourself with. So like, I mean, obviously there was that like upper crust of like editors and writers and artists that had some questionable activity in the past, and you're not going to see them around anymore because times have changed and those people aren't going to be welcome, and like a lot of people would say that's like a cancel culture or whatever, I don't know, SJW, blah, 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 whatever the hell, whatever the phrase is that they want to use. But really, I just always go back to like Captain America. I don't like bullies. I don't like people that push people around. And I'm like, it sets me off. Like you could ask my wife, if I see something wrong happening in the world, I jump into it. I don't care if I get punched in the face. Like I will go after someone because I just hate bullies. And so, if you're telling me that like bullies are not going to be in comics anymore, great, that's fine. I do want to show you one other pitch. And this is a project that I worked on, and we scored a graphic novel adjacent to this. So like we have to put this on hold. And everyone that we've talked to about this book wants it, but they're like, come back when you're done with it. Come back when you're closer. Cause we only have, I'll show you. So again, same format. By the way, you can tell how old these are because all of my addresses are different. I jump around a lot, but like,
it's beautiful, dude.
It's so cool. And like, it's like I did the issue breakdown, and then we did some sample pages, and this is what we've done so far. And this is the book that we sent this pitch out, and then we got another job offer based on this. So like, I'm not saying that you can't get a job doing comic books and going out there in the world, but it's just getting out in front of people that's the hardest thing, So.
Wow. I mean, so, but I think the when I look at this, what the first thing I think is besides, wow, that's beautiful. The next thing I think is this was all self-funded. You are essentially taking all the risk, and because you're taking all the risk, I would hope that the revenue split is significantly slanted to the creators. Am I right or wrong?
No, a lot of companies have a boilerplate contract that they use, and it's usually somewhere around 50-50. Sometimes it's 60-40. And then, like I've been the victim of some bad contracts. And so I'm very much a contract first guy. Like if I don't like the temperature of the water, I'm not going to jump in it. I'm just not going to, even if I like the company, even if I think that I'm going to sell a lot. A lot of it is if I don't feel like I own my own projects, I don't want to do them. Like, again, that's why I'm kickstarting The Broken Circle and Prom of the Dead, is because I worked out a really good distribution deal with the publisher, but they don't own any of it. That's very rare. It's very rare. Image is a company that is all creator. Like basically they take their cut right off the top, and then you have complete ownership of it. That's great. I have not done an Image book yet. So I'm trying to find avenues to get that deal, or a deal that I feel that I'm happy with. And I was, during the Prom of the Dead Kickstarter, I was just searching Kickstarter and looking for projects, and that were like in direct competition with me, just to see what was out there. And Behemoth had a Kickstarter going, and I then clicked on them, found their website, loved everything that they did. And I was like, this company is going to go somewhere, and I know it. So I contacted them before they were in Diamond. And then I worked behind the scenes with them to help them get into Diamond, and to help them, get connections in printing, to get in touch with, like other editors and whatnot. And like, we all became friends, and it felt a lot like Action Lab, only with better contracts. Like I was like, well, if I could do this, and honestly, like I said, I feel like I have an eye for quality, and everything that they put out is top notch. I feel like Behemoth is what Vertigo used to be before DC canned Vertigo. So if that's a ringing endorsement to anyone, I think it should be. I think everyone should go check out their stuff. But again, like, because I'm funding the printing and the art, and I'm going to color it myself and letter it myself, and I'm writing it, I'm not taking any money for myself. Like, I'm literally putting everything into the artist and the printing. And I do that because I have a good day job, right? That, it's not going to kill me. It might kill me to color it because it's going to be a lot, but at the end of the day, I said, hey, Behemoth, I'll pay for everything. All you need to do is get it into Diamond and we have a deal. And they said, we're not in Diamond. And I said, I'll help you get into Diamond. And I helped them along the way to get into Diamond. So again, it's like, you just make these connections, you make friendships, the whole thing about comics is it's interactive. All of it's interactive. You know what I mean? Like you can't have a comic without lettering. Like a comic isn't a comic until it's lettered. And that's why I kind of love lettering it, because then I get to say, I just made a comic book. I finished this comic book. It's pretty cool. But yeah.
So I admire you tremendously for doing all that work yourself, because I'm trying to do this is my very first comic. Obviously, you're far along in the process to me, but I'm trying to do every single part of it, at least for the experience of A, could I do it by myself? B, if I ever hire somebody in the future, I want to know what they're going through. I want to know how hard it is to letter. I want to know how hard it is to color. I want to know how hard it is to flat. And it is. It's quite time consuming. Yeah.
Hey, by the way, do you need a flatter? I can hook you up with someone that's really good.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You know what? If I'm trying to, in the future, if I'm like, you know what, I'm going to put this out at this date and I don't care what anybody says, I'm going to do it at this date, then yes, I'm going to hire a flatter.
Yeah.
I'm going to need to do it. So yes, if the day I need a flatter, I will reach out to you.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. It's so funny. Like people are always like, suspicious of me in some weird way, because I'm always trying to help people. Like I'm always like, you need an artist, I know a bunch. You need a writer, I got it. You know what I mean? Like I'm always like, because I can't get it out of my head. Like I don't want to deal with the business side of comics anymore, and that I don't want to sit on that side of the desk. But I love putting people together, because I love what that feels like for me. And like when I get to put a writer and artist together and watch them make magic, it fills me with a different satisfaction. And that's the only reason I'd ever get into publishing again. And I just can't do it. At this point, I realized that I got into comics. I got into art because I wanted to tell a story. I got into writing comics because I had stories to tell. I got into publishing because I didn't have an avenue to get those stories out. I got out of publishing because I couldn't deal with the politics of it. And I went right back to the thing that made me the creator that I am. You know what I mean? Wow. So like it all comes full circle. And, like I played drums in a band for years, and I gave that up because I was like, a baseball player isn't an award-winning chef, and an award-winning chef. Yeah. And a chef isn't a scientist, right? Well, I mean, maybe they're, a molecular, maybe they're boiling stuff in bags. I don't know what they're doing, but I do know that if you're going to become an expert or a professional at something, you have to give it your all. And if I had too many things going on, I wouldn't be able to do it. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't be able to be as good as I am. So
I completely, and I will take you up on a printer if you can. I would prefer somebody in New Jersey so I can say on my Kickstarter, locally printed.
Yeah.
But if not, no worries. If you could hook me up with a printer, email me a printer, that'd be great.
Let's talk offline, because it's. When it comes to printers, it's tricky just because if you're self-publishing, it's all about quantity, right? I mean, like the more you order, the cheaper it is. And it's actually probably better to get 1,000 copies, but there's been plenty of times that's, and you're doing a one shot. Is that right?
Yes, sir. But it will be a series. There's other 1677 when Burlington was founded. There's other interesting stories here, which I found.
Cool.
It'll be a series.
Okay. I'll let's talk in the next couple of days, and I'll give you my list of people that I use and collaborate with. And in fact, it's so funny. Like I was just talking to the guys at Behemoth, and they had a printer that they were using, and I was like, "Hey, can I use your printer?" And they're like, "Cool." And then something happened, and they went back to the printer that I originally hooked them up with. So now for this Kickstarter, I know that I'm going right to that printer with this book, because I know they're super reliable and super great to work with. So yeah, I'm, my fingers are crossed on this Kickstarter though, man. Like I hate Kickstarters. Like every time I do one, I never want to do it again. And there are just certain projects, just depending on where I'm at in the process, like, and which publisher is going to publish it. Like a lot of publishers don't pay advances. So you have to figure out a way to make the money work. Right. And something like, I mean, not everyone's going to get a distribution deal, but I would say if anyone's going to try to go for a company that pays advances, I think you just do the legwork. I don't want to name names because I don't want to speak out of turn. You know what I mean? I don't want to say this is the contract, right? But I just being around the block as much as I have, I know which publishers treat their creators well, which don't, which pay advances, which don't. And just because a company doesn't pay in advance doesn't mean it's not the right company. You know what I mean? Like, just depends on what you're willing to compromise and what you're willing to do. And honestly, like my biggest words of advice to anyone listening is don't sign a contract that you're happy with today. Even if you're like, I'm going to get published, sign the contract that you're going to be happy with 5 years from now, because you're in a relationship. If there's hairs on the back of your neck that are saying, I don't really like this deal, it's just going to get worse. It's like being married to the wrong person. You're like, I knew right away that something was off, and yet you got married anyway. Like, don't do that, right? So treat everything like you would a relationship, because that's all we are. That's all we have is relationships. So like, and that's why I don't mind giving myself to other people's creative processes. What I hate is when people don't recognize that you're doing that. A thank you goes a long way. And when you deal with some creators that are just in their own headspace, you don't get that. And in fact, sometimes you get vitriol and you're like, why? Like, what am I doing wrong? And a lot of creators get into the business because they feel like this is where they need to be and this is where they're going to be, but they got to realize that they're in comic books. It's comic books. So it's an uphill climb the whole way through,
That makes complete sense. By the way, I notice we're running a little over. I don't want your wife to be upset at me. I know you're probably hungry, want some dinner. I totally get that. I want to respect your time. Just one last thing. I was going to ask you for some parting words. You gave some parting words. So for some brand new writer, maybe he's a teenage kid, maybe he's a 40-year-old who just realizes that he likes writing, he wants to tell stories. What is your advice to that person looking to learn how to write comics?
Oh, this is a good one. Become a fan of dialogue. Obsess over your characters so much that when you get on the printed page, they write themselves because they're speaking through you because you know them that well. I don't write anything unless I've thought about it for a long time. And when I do, it's almost as if like I'm possessed by some demon that's just like, get it out, just do it. Don't be discouraged, and don't think it's ever too late to start. When I was a kid, I was talking to Derek Robertson, the guy who did The Boys and Transmetropolitan, Bay Area guy back in the day. And he's a few years older than me, but he was like, yeah, 30 is the best age to get into comic books. He's like, because you've burned through all of your crappy, I'll smoke off this day because I'm going to go hang out and party with my friends, or I got to go chase a girl or chase a guy or whatever it is. Like, you just become more focused and you realize what's most important to you. So it's never too late. Like, a lot of people are like, oh man, I'm too late to get in the game. And I'm like, nah, it's never too late. And if you do have a creative passion, that shines through. It really does. Like, I was in art school and they're like, why are you here? They're like, you don't need to be here. You're going to do it without this. And I kind of took that to heart, and I kind of disagreed because what I lost was not the ambition. I like the focus. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have the work ethic, and I wasted so many years being just a drugged out drunk, and like, it's not. I don't look back and regret it. I just regret that I didn't get more done. And maybe that's why I'm as productive as I am now, because I'm making up for lost time. But yeah, don't ever be discouraged, but never put 12 panels on a page. That's as a writer, don't put 12 panels on a page. And especially if you're going to write dialogue in all those panels, because like if I do a 9 panel or a 12 panel, silent panels, because you're going for something. You're going for a mood, or you're going for detail, and you're going for the detail in the art at that point, not in the writing. So that's my word of advice. I always think in six panels, like a page at max. You know, you learn all that stuff, because you're going to get some feedback from some artists that are going to be like, I hate you. Just like I hate writers that write way too many sound effects. I'm just like, God, dude, stop it. So
that's hilarious. I think the viewers are gonna love that. Now I realize it's getting late, so I'll let you go so your wife doesn't, so you can go eat. But before I let you go, I just want to say, first of all, good luck with your book. I know it's already exceeded its funding, but the more it gets, the more people will get to read it. And I wish you the world of success, not only with your Kickstarter campaign, but also with your your Dark Horse book. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. I was not expecting you to with only a few days left and as busy as you are, taking time out for a small channel like me. So thank you so much.
Well, and I'll tell you, anyone that wants any advice or connections, you want me to look at your scripts or your art or anything like that, it's just at Dave Dwonch all over the internet. I'm super lazy. It's just at Dave Dwonch. And then, yeah, like you said, the Kickstarter is going to end in a couple days. And then Jenny Zero #1 comes out in April. So if you guys are looking for a really fun, hyper detailed, hyper R-rated, like
Kaiju
love letter to Kaiju and Ultraman and Shogun Wars and stuff like that, check that book out from Dark Horse. I would be remiss if I didn't shout out to my co-writer Brockton McKinney and artist Magenta King, and then on the Broken Circle, that artwork right there is Santiago Gailen. So yeah, but thanks for having me on, and anytime you want to talk, or we'll talk after this for sure, because I'm sure we're going to talk about printing and publishing and all that stuff.
Awesome. So. First of all, it's been a pleasure, and I'm going to go back your campaign, and you can expect this video hopefully tomorrow, post it on my YouTube channel, and then I'll spread that on social media. So that will be my goal. But thank you so much,
awesome.
Dave. I appreciate it. Yeah. You're the best.
Angelo, it's been a pleasure, brother. And I'll talk to you soon, all right? And anytime you want to do this again, I'm your guy.
You're the man. You are the man. Thank you very much,
awesome,
Dave. Thank your wife for me. And appreciate it.
I will. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon. Bye.
And there you have it. I hope you learned a lot about how to break into the comic book industry as a writer. Thank you again to Dave Dwonch for taking the time to do this interview. If you viewers would like to learn more about Dave and back his campaign, then his website and Kickstarter are linked in the description below. If you found this video helpful and you'd like me to keep making more, then please convey that to both me and the YouTube algorithm by hitting like, subscribe, and the bell icon for notifications. If you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions for future videos, then please let me know in the comments section down below. I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.